Xi Jinping just obliterated China's economy. The people of China have taken the brunt of the wrath of the COVID-19 pandemic. Lockdowns and quarantines in recent months have devastated the economy. The virus, which first emerged on the international scene back in 2020 out of Wuhan, has a distinction of not only originating in China, but also being the most destructive in China, where it has continued its path of destruction well beyond the life of the worldwide pandemic in other parts of the world. Millions of people are still being held in what can only be defined as prison cells to this day, penalized for the offense of just being in the vicinity of a person who tested positive for COVID. China's quarantine of their own citizens has wrecked the economy so badly that there is no way for them to recover from this damage anytime soon. Hello and welcome to another video of Finance Sense, where we cover all the latest trends in the financial markets and the economy. Before we start, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment below if you enjoyed watching this video. And turn on the notification bell to keep posted. Now, without further ado, let's head on to the video. The CCP has recently hinted that the end of their zero COVID policy may be near. However, there is more to this story than meets the eye. And despite the lack of reaction from the legacy media, these assertions have raised problems that must be addressed. In China, the lockdowns that fled the West in 2021 never ceased to exist. In February 2022, the whole day of Shanghai was placed under a quarantine that included nearly 30 million people and lasted for 6 months. In Tianjin, one of the biggest port cities in the world, 21 million people were confined in September, disrupting supply lines everywhere. Just a few months ago, in October, a region of Wuhan was locked down because it was prohibited to be seen outdoors for any purpose. China has taken the fight against COVID to an entirely new level, but this has not been well received by the public. This has been done in a way that is known to be very cruel. Some people have starved to death in their cells and others have been denied medical care. In November, protests against the Communist Party, the lockdowns, and COVID-19 measures began to spread throughout China and soon gained momentum. The protests worsened to the point that legally authorized Western journalists were detained under the pretense of preventing them from contracting COVID from the crowd, which was directly from the mouth of the Communist Party. The situation was getting out of hand, and for the first time in years, concerns were raised about Xi Jinping's ability to rule the nation. Legitimate questions concerning armed revolutions and coups were beginning to be raised. The CCP did everything it could to put an end to these protests. WeChat posts were censored, and they even forbade using cartoon characters in specific words. Even the crowds at World Cup football games were censored by the Communist Party because they didn't want Chinese citizens to witness so many individuals standing next to one another with no COVID restrictions at all. However, it appears that the enormous volume of online discontent exceeded China's censorship systems because it took them days to delete critical posts when in the past, they would often be removed in a matter of minutes. It is quite evident that the CCP had to act, and they did. Premier Sun Chunlan, the main official in charge of the battle against COVID, spoke on November 30 and appeared to have relaxed her formerly rigid attitude about lockdowns. She said the Omicron strain is becoming less harmful as more individuals are vaccinated. However, many of them are also advocating that China should not abandon its zero COVID policy, stating that doing so will result in the deaths of thousands of Chinese. From a financial standpoint, investors are far more skeptical and a consensus is yet to be reached. The value of the Golden Dragon Index, a group of Chinese firms listed on American markets, increased by a massive 5% on the 7th and 8th of December when this news was released, after a week in which prices rose by an additional 54%. However, since the Chinese Shanghai Composite Index has barely changed since such a news was published, Chinese investors are not as enthusiastic. Perhaps Chinese investors have a better recollection when it comes to the claims of the Communist Party, but American investors are no strangers to getting caught up in bullishness and abandoning all sense of precaution on the assumption that a Federal Reserve pivot will finally arrive every month. So what can we expect to happen next? What will truly transpire in China? Are COVID lockdowns now a thing of the past? Since Xi Jinping has absolute power and authority over all of China, it is essential to note that the only person who can predict what will happen next is him. Anything he desires will happen. But he seems to have changed his mind quickly, which is not consistent with anything he's done previously. These COVID lockdowns weren't about COVID, rather, they were about maintaining control and power while also ensuring that the Chinese population would never become used to the concept of freedom. Every citizen in China has been locked down on a regular basis for the last 3 years, to the point that it has become normal. This is a level of control over the public that most governments can only dream about, and it firmly establishes the CCP as the sole authority in the country that can never be really opposed. The issue is that over the last month, these protests have turned unduly violent and severe, even resulting in a few public fatalities for which the CCP is widely acknowledged to be responsible. As a result, the populace began to speak up in protest. But the underlying question is whether Xi Jinping's main objective has shifted. Has his desire for undisputed power changed? Unfortunately, the only possible answer to this question is no. Xi Jinping is the same person he was a month ago, which doesn't look good for China's future lockdowns. The Communist Party uses them as a weapon, and any government, especially an authoritarian one, would never give up such an effective weapon. Lockdowns will return, whether under the pretense of COVID or not. The camps constructed in recent years will not be demolished, nor will the COVID marshals who have served as riot police be laid off. The ordinary Chinese citizen can only believe what he sees with his own eyes. He has no means of knowing whether or not millions of people are being held in isolation camps and must instead put their faith in the government's word. The way the legacy media in the West has assisted the CCP in damage control by highlighting China's move and explaining how everything would change is unexpected and, in fact, quite criminal. The CCP repeatedly declared throughout 2021 and 2022 that they were finally going to end their draconian COVID regulations and allow people to live their ordinary lives, only to lock them all down once more whenever they felt like it. Upon hearing this news, many investors also believe that now is the ideal time to make an investment in China. But people who believe the statements of the CCP will continue to be taken aback when it does the unexpected and locks down millions of citizens once again. Hi, we hope you liked watching this video and learned something important. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay up to date on our videos, and make sure to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. This is Finance Sense, helping you keep up with all the latest trends in the financial markets and the economy. Until next time!